Hello, welcome back to All for United WFC. We said, didn't we, Phil, just before the tournament, we'd get the three of us on a show while the World Cup is going on. We actually made it happen finally. Alina is fresh-faced back from Australia, so we're going to start with that actually in just a second. But yeah, get your thoughts in over the next kind of hour or so. We'll try and cover most of the games. We're going to focus on the big stories though. And look ahead to the quarterfinal because it's kicking off tomorrow again. You do a couple of days rest and it's straight on to the next one. So plenty to talk about. So we're going to get into all of that. But yeah, so get all your thoughts in all of that stuff. But yeah, Alina, I'll throw it straight over to yourself because as I said to you backstage, you're the first person we've had on that's been to Australia during the World Cup, obviously. So yeah, just what it was like for you, your experience out there. I know you went to a few games out there as well. Just what it's been like for you over there.
Yeah, it's been great. It was a bit difficult to tell in advance what to expect from Australia, from being there, and what it's like, how our football is perceived there. But there was so much enthusiasm about the tournament, and you couldn't really miss it. Like, even though you might even if someone might not be into football, they would know right away that there's a big tournament happening because there's advertisements everywhere, and the Matildas are like the faces of the marketing campaign down there. They are everywhere. Everyone's like wearing the football jerseys in public. It's become a real thing. You see the green and gold everywhere, and that's just really nice to see. And that atmosphere and that just swaps over, and it's been great to see so many people go to the games that also didn't involve Australia. And I think it was the same but like in New Zealand, that a lot of people came to the games that didn't involve like New Zealand, the New Zealandic team. And there's just a big interest in all the other national teams, and everyone's just really really happy to go to the games, and it's just great to see, and that's why we want to see it at such a big tournament.
Connor, could I ask a question of our good friend Alina? Just
You far away.
because I mean, it was one of the biggest stories of the World Cup for me. Alina, how did it feel to be the German that spent the most time at the World Cup this time around?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, for me, it was clear that I would have to leave like before the group stages, but like for the team, it wasn't clear. So, yeah, that's a story of its own. Might be a bit too long to explain it here, but it's like pretty much shocking. Everyone here in Germany is quite upset with how the World Cup ended for the team. It's not how we would have wanted it to go, and yeah, we will see how it affects the league. And I think the players are just devastated. The players are obviously devastated, and we'll see what an impact this has on women's football here.
It was certainly a shock. I think, well, Phil, you were on the show pre-tournament. As I said, no one listens to me on air. Well, they shouldn't because all of my predictions are wrong. Not just one of them, all of them. My winner, my golden boot predictor, my golden glove one, my dark horse, my flop of the tournament. They've all every single one. So yeah, no one should just listen to a word I say on here. That's why I got these two to hopefully gives you better.
You know what, Connor? I think I've been a bit hard on yourself there, mate, because we can talk as much as we like before things happen, and then weird things can happen. Okay, so Germany getting knocked out of the tournament wasn't because they don't have good players, and it wasn't because they're not a good team. It's because they had crappy tactics and they're playing Svenja Huth at right back, which is against God's creation for the religious members of the community here. Right?
It was terrible to see, really.
It's unreal. Like, and then when people make decisions like that, and we had the same situation with Norway, because we came out and we listed all the things that Norway would have to do right this time around, and they did exactly the same thing as they did against England last summer. Hence, they're all back in the fjords now as well already. So, I used to feel bad when I talked about these things, and the predictions didn't come true. But now I don't feel so bad because if we tell people to do things and they don't listen to us, well, then I'm afraid they've only got themselves to blame.
I was going to say I was fully back in Norway this tournament as well. I really thought, but
that's twice now. I've had you on the Norway boat.
Can you learn from the Euros, Connor?
The Norway
Phil and pre-tournament hype. I really believe every word you say.
You know what I should actually do? Instead of doing it on All for United, I need to go to the Norway team hotel and convince them that they can do this as well. Maybe that's the mistake we're all making.
Yeah, well, as you know, you can convince us pretty much everything. So I look forward to that one. We'll start off with obviously the big story of the weekend. When was it now? It's a few days ago now. It seems like so long ago now with obviously getting out to the quarterfinals. Yes, it was. So Alina, throw it over to yourself and then Phil just following on it. Just your thoughts on the Sweden-USA game, because I mean, pretty one-sided, but only one team goes through, and fair play to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from a fan perspective, it was not good for the nerves, I can tell you that. Stressful until the very last minute, and once it went to penalties, you would kind of feel for Sweden because they obviously had recently they didn't have the best experiences with penalties. if you think about the Olympics, obviously, but before they knocked out the US at a big tournament already, like on penalties. So it could have gone both ways, and just shows the quality that we have in the tournament this year, that like the big teams can fall out like quite early, and that there's a lot of upsets. And yeah, as you just wrote it, Musovic was amazing. For being the new #1 in Sweden's goal, that was a great performance, game of her life, a lot of people said, and that was really good to see, actually. And it's crazy to imagine that she's only the #2 at Chelsea, and it just shows how also the goalkeeping game has stepped up. And as I said, I think that the USA game could have gone both ways. USA have improved a lot from the previous games in the tournament, and also showed what quality they have. And I think Sweden registered their first shot on goal. What was it, 85th minute? That didn't speak for their offensive game, but they were so tight in defense. And yeah, we'll be curious to see how it works out against Japan.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird one against Japan. I'm sure we're going to discuss that in more detail a little bit later. But from the Swedish perspective here in Stockholm, watching that game play out, it was interesting to see how the Americans played, and the fact that there are so many players who are coming to the end of their time in the USWNT after 2 World Cups, after really sort of owning the international game for the last 10 years. And that was sort of illustrated when Megan Rapinoe fired her spot kick over the bar. And if she had just taking control of that. That was the point where the US could take control of that penalty shootout. Had she scored that, there was no way back really for Sweden. You couldn't. Zecira Musovic was absolutely tremendous in that game. That penalty goes in. We're not talking about that. We're talking about how the USA is lumbering towards a 3rd title. But it's a bit like, I think it was what Oscar Wilde said about going bankrupt. He said first it happens very slowly, and then it happens really, really quickly. And that was what happened to the Americans, was when they shook a little bit, because let's remember, Sweden were behind in that penalty shootout, and they had to come from behind to win it. And then the fact that they win it like by millimeters, the ball is only just over the line. I don't know if you saw the story I wrote the other day. Lena Hurtig, who now plays for Arsenal in the Women's Super League, she was talking about it, and somebody asked her, are you going to immortalize that in a tattoo? And she said, well, if we beat Japan and win the whole tournament, well then maybe, but it's also going to be like, the distance between the 2 lines that make up the ball and the goal line is probably going to be the smallest. You're going to have to tattoo that with a microscope because it was so small. And it's just those margins which absolutely makes it brilliant. The fact that she has to go to the referee has the VAR in her ear, and the goal line technologist in her ear going, was that over the line? Was that not over the line? And that really was the sort of the drama of it. And that, coupled with Zecira's performance, that's the kind of thing that wins you championships, right? Champions are forged in fires like this. Very rarely do you win a championship without facing this kind of adversity. So when Lena Hurtig puts that ball over the line, Zecira does what she does, all of a sudden you have to think that the energy levels go up, that everybody thinks, look, it doesn't matter what happens now, we will find some way to win these games. And that's going to be a huge thing coming in against Japan.
It's certainly, I mean, even for myself, obviously I wanted Sweden to win that because I just didn't want, I wanted anyone but the USA to go through. But, even, I don't like watching penalties at the best of times, even if it, I have no affiliation to either team. But some of the, as you said, Sweden behind, that Rapinoe penalty was the one. As you mentioned, she scores that, it probably does go the way of the USA. And it's not too much is being looked at, but we spoke about this on last week's show, and I think it's something Miriam brought up when she was on, that talking about, and it's kind of a question I ask you both. If I won't want to spend too long on this, but what next for the US? Because obviously, quite an early exit. I'm pretty sure they finished in the top 3 at every single World Cup. I think. I don't know whether that's mistaken or not. So, what next for them now? Is it a change of coach potentially that they need to look at? Because it's not like they were, I guess, bad in the game, but they've been below, I guess, par for most of the tournament. You saw that through the group stage, only just scraped through by a width of a post. That goes through, and then Portugal are in that round. But I guess anything for you to add on in terms of what you think next for the US? Do you think it is a change of coach? Do you obviously, there's a transitional period. There's a lot of young players in that squad. But how long, I guess, do you think it is before they are, I guess, back challenging? Because the program in America is not going to accept finishing that low, in future tournaments.
I notice Alina has muted herself now, and she's just sitting there nodding along. I'm not sure she has any strong opinions, but sure, I suppose I'll give you mine because that's what we're here for. I think in a situation like that, when you're coaching essentially the biggest international team in women's football, and you come in and that's what you present, because let's face it, they weren't good in the group stage either. So in that case, what usually happens to the coach is that they leave the job as they entered it, fired with enthusiasm, right? I thought he did a really bad job in terms of preparing his side for the penalties, in terms of, in understanding what that situation was. The penalty takers, okay, but just in general, like throughout that game, I think they looked very, very, very flat. And the problem is not that, they were previously ahead of everybody else, but the rest of the world is catching up now in terms of the football they play, in terms of the physicality that they're capable of. Teams like Colombia have shown this already, that you can really, really close the gap, the technical gap, just by physically being strong enough and fast enough and having the conditioning to be in the right place at the right time for 120 minutes if you need to be. And that, to me, was what Sweden did to them. Sweden weren't necessarily technically better than them on the day, but I do think that they were really, really well prepared and they were really, really well organized. And when the changes came then, Hurtig coming in for Aslani, they really managed to do that. But I think that the Americans also now need to look back to, there was a time in the start of this century when all the best American players started to go play abroad, right? I remember Kristen Press playing here in Sweden for a good number of years, and I think they need to start looking to Europe again. I don't think it's enough now to think that the NWSL, that you can have that sort of insular view of things, that just playing there is going to be enough in international football. I don't think that's enough anymore. I think that they have to find their way back to the Lyons and the PSGs and the Barcelonas and the Manchester Uniteds and the Arsenals of this world, Chelsea, City, that kind of thing, if they're really going to keep in touch with this sort of the rest of the posse that's coming up, and it has now overtaken them at this World Cup.
Nodding along and just muting yourself, that's a very German thing to do, to be honest. I agree with you, Phil, but I think also it's difficult. Obviously, there's been a lot of people like demanding the head coach to step back and to get sacked or anything. And of course, the USA have been underperforming, but also you wonder how much a top team like the USA, how much time they have for a rebuild or for that transitional period of losing players, getting new players in, them adapting to the system. If they fire the head coach, getting a new head coach in, that will be difficult with the Olympics next year, because obviously a top team like the USA, they have ambitions for the Olympics, and I think maybe 1 year might not be enough to regroup and to find back to your full strength. And that's obviously a tournament where you have to be there from the first minute on, just like the World Cup. So remains to be seen how they will do next year and what type of changes we will actually see.
I think they probably have enough players, though, Alina, where you could go in. If you're a coach with a very strong sense of purpose, right? If you're a good teacher, a good educator, and you say, right, I have this way of playing and I have these players, right? Now, what we've seen a lot of at this World Cup, and I absolutely despise it, is coaches picking players to fit their system and not the other way around, right? That's ignorance. That's not knowing the game of football, right? You can't start playing Svenja Huth's right back just because you want all your best players on the pitch. It's bullshit. The only team getting away with that is Rolfö for Sweden, for Lina Rolfö playing on the left, because that's what she does for Barcelona and she understands that role. Everybody else doing it fired into the sun, right? So you need to get a coach now, like Renard has done with France, who comes in and looks around and goes, okay, who have we got? This is the way we're going to play. Instead of going, this is the way we're going to play, who the hell are you, right? We can't be doing that anymore. And it's disrespectful to, they call it the program in terms of, the American soccer, that they have players there. And I don't think it's going to take too much. We're always very quick to write the obituary of a great champion, like what the USA has been, because we kind of want to make space for everybody else. But they're not that bad after all. I don't think it's going to take that much. But as Alina says, the calendar's against them. The Olympics is up next year. And this is what makes women's international football so difficult, because, you're straight into another very, very important qualifying phase. And it is hugely important for the sport in America that they get into the Olympics.
No, for sure. I don't have anything really to add on the back of what you're saying. To be fair, everyone in the comments pretty much agreeing with. There's a lot of people saying that they haven't really developed since 2019 and so on. That this has been coming. Obviously, they've had a poor run up until this point anyway. So I don't think this is a massive surprise. I'm just surprised going out as early as they did. And to be fair, as we said on the game that we're talking about, they weren't bad in the game. If it wasn't for a masterclass in goal, they would have probably scored. I think on any other day they probably do. So I don't think they were as bad as people make it out. On that one. I'm glad you got fired into the sun of the show. That took 14 minutes. I'm glad you got that into it. That's probably not going to be the last time we hear that, because we're moving on to Japan-Norway next. So I'm assuming it's going to come off.
Oh my God, they're queuing up for their tickets into the sun on that one.
Let's go, Phil.
And not for the first time, someone's agreeing with it, and not just anybody. YouTube royalty, I will call it. So if you
YouTube
haven't,
royalty, there she is, all the way from the other side of the Atlantic, the North Atlantic posse representing there.
Greetings to Canada.
Indeed. So if you haven't already, go and check out her channel. She's just done a brilliant video on Japan that is fantastic, by the way. So make sure you go and watch that and subscribe to her channel if you haven't already. So we'll move on to Japan, Norway then. Now, I mean, so many issues here. I don't even know where to start. But I guess I'll just come to each of you then, your kind of initial thoughts. Alina, I'll start with yourself again. Surprised? No, I'm guessing not, that Japan obviously went through in that one. But what have you made of kind of both teams, really, Japan and Norway, and obviously that game in particular?
Yeah, I think Japan were the clear favorites, and it's just shocking. And Phil will agree with me on this. I was just shocking to see that Norway apparently haven't learned anything from what happened at the Euros. That there was no progress, no big changes. That they just basically continued where they left at the Euros, and it was just shocking to see because there's so much quality in the team, so many great players, and you would expect more from them. And then there's Japan, who are so clinical, who have surprised everyone at this tournament, who are so precise with everything that they do, who are so precise with their passing, who are so well structured. And that's amazing to see. And of course, you would also want to have a team like Japan to go further in the tournament because they did so well. And I can't wait to see how it turns out against Sweden.
Just quickly, Phil, before you jump in, just on this, off the back of what Alina said, but also this comment here, Norway need a new coach. I've been, I guess, slightly against the grain on this one. I agree. I don't think Hege Riise got I don't think she got most things right during the tournament. But we said this after the Euros last summer. So this is two coaches now. Does the problem maybe lie somewhere? And I'm not just looking at the players here. Maybe some things off the pitch looking elsewhere. I don't know. It seemed... Or do you think it's just two bad appointments kind of back to back that haven't really understood the squad? Because I think we said pre-tournament, didn't we, about Norway? This squad's not getting any younger. There's so much talent there. They can't afford to keep wasting tournament after tournament because eventually a lot of these players are going to be too old to be pushing later into tournaments.
I think there's a big problem there in terms of the dynamics of the group that they have, and they haven't managed to harness that in a correct way, right? Martin Sjögren was brought in after, for the Euros in 2017, and he was brought in to play a more expansive football, right? To possess the ball, to play the ball along the ground, to get the most out of the various different players that they have. Yeah, exactly, Erling. It was amazing to see that. And he did that to a point, right? And when they got to the World Cup in 2019, they played reasonably well, got through, beat Australia on penalties, then lost to England on my birthday. Thanks for that, girls. Then they had the disaster that was the Euros last year, right? And again, there's certain things there that didn't really work. And I would posit that Martin got the same things wrong as what Hege did. And this is why Hege has a first-class ticket in the rocket going to the heart of the sun this evening, right beside the American coach, with a few people in the rows behind her as well that we'll get to later. But there's fundamental flaws in that Norwegian team, right? One is that they're aging. Maren Mjelde is one of the best centre-backs I've ever seen, one of the best defenders, one of the best footballers I've ever seen, not getting any younger, right? She wasn't fit at the Euros last year, and she's a year older this year, right? Still a brilliant player, not individually in any way responsible for what happened, but you have to take that into account. Tuva Hansen is not and never will be a left back, right? No, there is no, you cannot produce any theorem, any mathematical formula, any sort of serum, any alchemy that will ever turn her into a left back unless we're in the upside down from Stranger Things and everything is back to front, right? It's just not going to happen. Now, when you do that and you play Tuva in that position and you have Matilda Horviken, who is one of the most promising central defenders in Scandinavia, if not in Europe, she's 21 years old, right? And the moment I knew when Norway's World Cup was coming off the rails, wasn't against Japan and it wasn't against the Philippines. It was when they announced the team to play against New Zealand. Because you look at that and you go, I can't help you people anymore. You have learned nothing, right? The whole idea of playing a right footer at left back, the whole idea of playing Guro Reiten in central midfield, missing people Norway are still looking for. Apart from that header that she scored in the defeat to Japan there, that was literally all. And I don't blame her for that. Again, it's the thing of when you put the players into the system and not the other way around, it's ridiculous. You're just setting yourself up to fail. I would say that Sophie Roman Haug did a great job, especially in the second two games, and particularly against the Philippines where she scored a hat-trick. That girl is going to do fantastic things. Emily Horvey was another player, another right-footed player on the left-hand side. I go do you people not understand what's going on here? And JJ says that 2015 to 2019 was a great Norwegian team. Theoretically, yes, but in 2017 they went out the group stage without scoring a goal either. So these things have been there for quite some time, right? Yeah, they're going to try to grab Rolfo and drag her over the border there, Anton, I'd say. But Norway's problem isn't in the personnel that they have; it's how they put them out on the pitch, right? I talked about Lund at left back, anybody at left back, literally anybody, a 50-year-old, cashier for the local supermarket. As long as you have a left foot and you can put the ball 30 meters up the line, that'll do me. It's not going to take much more than that, because you should have good right and right in front of you, So these things are really, really simple. But I do think that the complex part for Norway is the dynamic, right? I think that there's a little bit of disagreement as to, Martin Sjögren gave an awful lot of leeway to Caroline Graham Hansen. Caroline loved him. She could do whatever she wanted. He listened to her. Then she left. Hege came in. Hege, as we mentioned before on this show, was very involved in LSK. I think 6 of the squad in 2019 had played for her at LSK before that, won the league, won the cup the year before that. So, but those girls who played for her at LSK are now no longer sort of happy amateurs or semi-professionals. They're some of the biggest names in the game, right? Ingrid Syrstad Engen just won the European Cup, the Champions League at Barcelona. You can't tell these people, okay, now you're going to do this. Oh, now you're actually dropped. That was all your fault. You can't do that anymore, right? So we have to raise the game. And personally, I love Hege Riise. Hege Riise is Norwegian football. She is their DNA, but she couldn't have got this more wrong. And she either holds up her hand when Lisa Klaveness, the president of the NFF, goes through this, which is she's doing at the moment, said, I screwed up there. We need to go back to the drawing board and dream all this up again. Or she has to go and somebody else has to come in. And literally the first question in the interview process has to be, do you play left-footed left backs? And if the answer is no, there's the door, pal.
I don't know how to follow that.
You also need to make them sign a contract to not play Julie Blackstad as left back, just to make
never. I don't think Julie would ever. That was the other thing that I resent greatly, is that she got to play the first half against New Zealand and was then dumped, and that's she's been like the scapegoat for so many things that have happened in that team. But I really think that somebody has to come in now and really sort of, both the structure of the team on the field, but also the dynamic off it is really, really important, because these are the things that matter at the very highest level.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I don't really know how to follow that. I think everything that could go wrong, I think, went wrong. You mentioned the left backs. That's something we spoke about pre-tournament. Tuva Hansen, fantastic player on the wrong side. So you've got a player out of position there. You've got Guru Wright, one of the best players, in the WSL last season. Put her out of position. Some would argue that can work, but you're playing her out of position. There was obviously the off-the-field stuff, and Graham Hansen and Hager, so talking. There was just so much noise, and obviously. Yeah, Vilda obviously came in, played a couple of games. It was a nice little assist that she got, and then thought that she'd even the game out by assisting Japan as well. So, there was a lot that kind of went wrong.
But if I could interrupt you there, Connor, right? That was Vilda exploiting these things. Like exactly as we said that she was going to get a chance because Frida Monum and Ingrid Engen can't play together, right? And we saw that in the first game, didn't work. Vilda came in late on and then was the starting central midfielder for the rest of the games that they played, including the one against Japan, right? And I actually think that Vilda did a tremendous job there, despite the fact that she wasn't, spraying 50-yard balls over her shoulder, left, right, and center. But she was so solid in there. And that has led me to believe that she has a right now to go back to Manchester United and say, look, lads, I've just started 3 or 4 games of the World Cup. I came in, I did well in the thing I did. I provided the assist in one of the toughest games that we had. You need to start treating me with respect or I'm going to have to leave here, right? And to do that when you're playing alongside Frida Monum, who was one of the best, if not the best midfielders in the Women's Super League last year, and Engen, who plays for Barcelona, I still don't think she's as complete a player or even close to what Monum could be. But to do that, to come in the way Vilda did, what did she play? 12 Women's Super League games last season? Well, that wasn't that many games anyway that she got in. And to do that on the back of the season, the tough season that she had, and it's all very well Mark Skinner saying, oh, she'll get more chances next year. That's fine. I'd prefer to have that in writing if you don't mind, because otherwise it's a thing, she has to be given that chance. She's 28 years old now. We don't need to see her anymore, especially the viewers in this channel don't need to see any more of her to know how good a footballer she is, and both for the national team and for Manchester United. I really do think that, we owe that kid something. We owe her a good run of 5, 6, 10 games the Women's Super League, because I really think that she's starting to blossom into a really top-class player.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with her, especially with another... I don't know what I can say on here and what I can't. With another potential midfielder coming in, and obviously Emma Watson, which everyone should know by now. She's been pictured in the training pictures. They leaked her training kit earlier. I don't know what United are doing with that one. Everyone knows it's happening, but nothing official.
What was it? Was it the away kit that they were trying to market? Was it? I heard they had a new one out, but they've kept it so secret. I've no idea.
Yeah, was it? Was it a new away kit? Wow.
Oh, don't. We're up to 15 posts, I think, on the third kit now.
It was hardly an advertisement.
Well, they need it. It's awful, to be fair, in my opinion. So there we are. Yeah, Phil is one of the only people that can speak for 3-4 minutes without taking a breath or a pause.
That's because nobody in my family speaks to me anymore, because I just rant about Norway and Sweden and Megan Rapinoe and stuff. So this is the only chance I have, lads.
So plenty of stuff there. We'll come back to Japan in just a second, because I don't want to get to the quarterfinals. Obviously, Sweden and Japan obviously is the next round, so we'll talk about that in just a little bit. There was very, very quickly on this one, because it came up twice. And talking about in a red shirt off the back of that. I can't see it personally, but
I can't see it happen. I think that she would be very, very good in the Women's Super League, right? Because she has the physicality. When she was younger, she looked smaller, she looked skinnier, she looked like you could knock her off the ball pretty easy, right? But whatever they've done to her at Roma, she's looking much more stable, much more. I think she's put on an awful lot more muscle. It's a much tougher physical league over there. And if you look at the first goal she scored against the Philippines, okay, I know it's the Philippines, they're making their debut at the tournament, but to do that with her left foot, which is like, her weaker foot in inverted commas, to do that and then to get those two headers, I really think that, she is the kind of player that the Women's Super League clubs are probably asking about. But I absolutely don't doubt that Roma want to keep her there because of the potential that they see in her. But it's amazing that, I can't remember what club she was at in Norway now, it's just escaped me for a second, but she was just one of those players that should have been picked up. Signe Brun was obviously one who was at Manchester United. There are these players coming through that, and I don't hear as much now. Previously I'd always have somebody saying, oh, United have asked about this player, United have asked about that player, and it's probably been a year now. It's probably because it's me as well, and United are saying, whatever you do, don't tell O'Connor we're looking at a player, because he'll just trumpet it on offer United. But they are the kinds of players that they should be looking at, because she could go straight in there, like, Sophie Roman-Haug could go straight in there and make a huge difference, especially now that a certain person, oh yeah, it was LSK Erling, that's correct, yeah. So she comes from, and that was just as LSK were sort of, they're now being sort of moved to one side because Rosenborg are getting big and Brann have invested heavily and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of good players out there that they could be bringing through that they really should have an eye on, rather than picking up, trying to be smart about things and picking up players from, teams in Spain or Portugal, like that. Because I think that they're also, the Scandinavian players, we have to remember, are very steeped in the English football culture. Everybody in Norway loves English football. They love Solskjaer, they love United, they love Liverpool, they love all these clubs. And I think that makes it easier for them then to settle, and the weather's crap.
Both ways, and you got over your pros and cons. Yeah, I think when you're talking about that, just very quickly from a United point of view, because obviously I'm conscious we've got a lot of United fans watching. I think when you're looking at attack, I think Paul put it a second. Was it Paul? Somebody put it. I've lost the comment now. No, it was JJ. Apologies. Talking about was hoping for another attacking Scandi player. We are looking the other way of the world for attacking players, rather than looking towards Scandi. We're looking towards South America. So, it's I wouldn't get your hopes up on signing any more Scandis this window. This window, I'd be looking towards the Americas on that one. And no, they are. I don't know what. It won't be for much longer. We'll get some preseason stuff, and like I said, Watson is there, so I don't know what they're waiting for on that. And there'll be another player, hopefully, in the next weeks or so. So yes, keep an eye on that one. Right, we'll move on to Spain and Switzerland. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this because not gonna lie, I didn't watch this one, so I can't possibly comment on what happened. Obviously, 5-1 victory. So I guess I'll kind of ask the question in terms of, Alina, start with yourself. Thoughts on that game? Obviously, pretty comfortable win for Spain in the end, kind of as expected. But what have you made of them in this tournament and their kind of, I guess, progression throughout this tournament? Because obviously the Japan one was a pretty embarrassing defeat in the group stages.
Yeah, definitely. But I think prior to the tournament, Spain were a bit difficult to predict how they would do without key players like Mapi Leon, and with all the disagreements within the federation, between the players and the federation, with all the unrest within the team. You never know how that affects the player. So it was difficult to predict. But Switzerland, for them, obviously it was historical to make it to the round of 16, but they were completely overrun by Spain, obviously. But it's Switzerland is a young team, a very unexperienced team, and they will learn from games like these. And I think that's one of the teams that could be on a good way to become like a good tournament team if they continue to develop, to continue to take part in such tournaments, and they'll grow by it step by step. And Spain are obviously on a much higher level, also with the players. You look at what clubs they play for and on what level they play, and what they have achieved in the past. And it's just such a shame that there's so much happening off the pitch affecting Spain, and that there's key players missing. And yeah, I think that definitely affected Spain in some way. But let's see how far they make it. But because of, I think a lot of people now switch their minds after the defeat 5-0 against Japan, like now 5-0 against Switzerland. I think a lot of people like might have Spain again, like on their list of favorites again. So it's difficult to predict how far they go, but they have it in the team. Yeah, you name the players that are missing. It's crazy if you look
What
at
a
that
list.
It's crazy, right? But yeah, let's see how far they go.
I think if they had all the players that Anton is listing there, I think they would be back among the favourites if they were to all arrive in Sydney or wherever tonight and say, yeah, actually we're going to play for Spain at the World Cup. That was a misunderstanding, but they're not. And I think that what we saw against Japan was who Spain really are at the moment, right? We have to remember, Alina, that Switzerland did really, really well there. But it's Switzerland, right? They're, one of the new teams or one of the up-and-coming teams, a very young team, apart from Ramona Bachmann, who's almost older than me at this stage. To have them, that was sort of, easy pickings, really. And a Spanish team playing in fourth gear is going to beat them, right? But I think now when we get to the stage where I was actually talking to somebody at FIFA, one of their technical analysts I sort of check in with every now and again after the games, and she was saying to me that, that's what you expect Spain to be. You would expect any Spain team, their under-20s or under-21s should be able to do that to a certain senior team from Ireland or from Switzerland or from Austria maybe, but not against England, not against France, not against, I was going to say Germany there, but they're gone as well. But, at that level, when they're playing against really good teams and all the good players are out, that's going to be problematic. So I do think that we might be about to see Spain departing from this tournament. And it's so tragic because you have such a brilliant generation of players. And it's not just at Barcelona. You have brilliant players at Spanish players at Atletico de Madrid. You have brilliant players coming through at Real Madrid as well. You've got some fantastic teams in there. That league really has grown in terms of quality in the last few years. And now this, now they just can't get it together. And it really is one of the stories of the tournament that, when you look at the, Jamaica having the crowd fund, Nigeria having fights over their bonuses, the way the Canadian women's team has been treated by their association. Frankly, like 6 years ago, the Irish women's team was calling a press conference because they had to get changed into tracksuits borrowed from the under-19s in the toilets of Dublin Airport. And it's still the year of our Lord, 2023, and we're still talking about this bullshit. Just fucking sort those problems out. Give these women the respect they deserve. Give them the conditions they deserve, the things that they need to go out and win, and put your own ego as a coach or as a president or as a director to a side, because it's not about you. It's about these women on the pitch and what they're doing.
No, 100%. It's a shame because if it wasn't for the issues around Spain, obviously the coach and so on, I would be back in there, and I'd want them to go for obviously on a fan favourite from a United point of view. I would be fully backing them, but I don't want them to go far. I don't want them to do well because of that reason. Because it's almost like tainted. Like if they go on and win, it's like, yeah, it's a tough one. But as you say, that obviously got through. We'll speak a little bit about obviously their next opponents in just a second. Obviously, I'm conscious we've got a couple of games to talk about. As I said, we're not going to go through all of them. We'll move on to Australia, Denmark. Obviously, the host Sam Kerr is back. Obviously, and around the set after missing the early games. Alina, for yourself, was that kind of an expected one? Obviously, 2-0 in the end. And what have you made of kind of Denmark's tournament? Do you reckon they'll be happy with how it's kind of gone? Do you think they would have liked to have got further? Where do you think
they'll be happy it's over?
No, I think Australia's obviously a tough nut to crack, like with all the home advantage, with all the enthusiastic fans. I said it in the beginning, Australia's football crazy these days, and that shows in the crowds. So many people turn up for those games, and that's really like, it's a difficult opponent. And for Denmark, I think it's similar to Switzerland. First tournament for like first World Cup participation for Denmark since 16 years. So that means like all of the players played their first World Cup games right now. And obviously also a very young squad mixed with some really, really good experienced players. And for them, it's also great to reach the round of 16, obviously. But after that, it would have been difficult for them to be in a tournament. I feel like the defense looked a bit shaky, and with Pernille Harder playing up front, not her preferred position, and then they changed it a bit too late, I think, putting in the second striker, Melly Vangsgaard. And then it's like all these things that should have been changed a bit prior to it, so that, I don't know, Vangsgaard maybe could have gotten more minutes. But they learn from it, and there's more tournaments for them to come. And I think Denmark are actually on a really good way to become like a good tournament team. You see with all the young players, Katrine Kuhl playing at Arsenal, what a talent! And there's more to come for her and the players like her, and that's really nice to see. And for Australia, I think it's really interesting with Sam Kerr. I just remember I was at Stadium Australia, and I remember the shock going through the crowds, through the fans, through the journalists there when it was announced that Sam Kerr couldn't play because of injury. There was like, people were really shocked, because that's the moment everyone has been waiting for her to lead her team out on home soil. That was the moment everyone had thought of, and it wouldn't happen. And everyone was just so shocked. But I feel like Australia took a lot of confidence from having to play without her, because obviously if you have a player like her, the system is a bit focused around her because you want her to score the goals, and she's such a sporting icon in Australia. Everyone knows her name. Everyone has a jersey with the number 20 and her name on the back. That's incredible to see. And her book is everywhere, and she's such a big public figure in Australia. But I feel like, of course, off the pitch, she's also very important. But I feel like it was really important for Australia to learn this lesson, that they can also do it without her. That they also have enough quality in the team to make it without her, and to make it far without her. And that was really good to see. And I feel like that's also something that the Netherlands might go through without Vivianne Miedema at the moment. That you're not so dependent on your star player. You have enough quality in the team to make it without them. But they are, of course, an important part of the squad. And now it's great for them to have her back. But they can also do without her. And I think that's a really important lesson learned. And I think it made them only grow in confidence.
With the fact that they got her back when they did, right? What was it, 10 minutes to go against Denmark, and she comes off the bench, and the lift that gave the crowd, right? And now she's back, she seems to have recovered all right, so she's available hopefully for their next game. And that's almost better than starting her against Ireland and all of a sudden, she comes in and she scores a goal, and that's just predictable, right? But when she is, the old soul singer James Brown used to do this thing at the end of his shows in the 60s where he would pretend to hurt himself dancing, and then he'd pretend to stagger off the stage, and they go, no, I have to come back on for my fans, and that's almost the kind of vibe you're getting off Sam Kerr now. But she's such a huge sporting icon, in line with Kathy Freeman, the 400 meters runner who won the gold medal there. That's who Sam Kerr is becoming for the people of Australia now. I think she has to play some part now when it's getting to the stage where, okay, now it's win or go home, but they do have this enormous goodwill and that enormous support behind them, and having been able to rest her for the group stage now in most of the Denmark game. But the Denmark thing is kind of weird, because I was talking to Lars, the coach, before the tournament, and he did two things. One was Andre Jeglerts was sort of announced a half an hour after our conversation, was announced that Lasse was going to be retiring, and Jeglerts never mentioned this to me, like a half an hour beforehand. He could have said, well, by the way, there's going to be a press release in a few minutes, just so that you know. So I never got the chance to ask him the questions about that. But we spoke for a good 40 minutes about how the most difficult thing for him was how to get the best out of Pernille Harder. And for 38 of those minutes, he was going, I'm probably going to play between the lines. So she plays a number 10, this kind of. And the first game, what does he do? She's up there as a centre forward. Is that? I can't believe you did this to me, Now, in the second half, he had to change things around, and he had to pull her out again, and they were better. But he also said that their biggest problem was that they've only one Pernille Harder. If you had two, he could play one at centre forward, who would be passed the ball by Pernille Harder, the playmaker, and that would have been great. But as you mentioned, Vangsgaard, I think, is a very promising young player. I still believe that Signe Brun is going to be an absolute top player. And Denmark, as a footballing nation, are always better when they fly by the seat of their pants, right? When they just go, bugger, let's go attack everybody, And when they were that little bit more conservative in the group stage and against Australia, it didn't click for them. They have to be able to play freely. They have to be able to give the ball away and go, okay, if we have to defend, we have to defend. But Lasse didn't allow them to do that. And I think that was the major problem. And I think Jägert's coming in now. If you look at what he's done in his career with the previous clubs he's had, I think he will allow them to play a little bit freer. And that's going to suit this generation of Danish players when they get to the Olympics or the next Euros.
Certainly fair points made on that one. I think, obviously, asking obviously about England and so on. I'm not going to cover England in this one because we spoke about it obviously in length after the game itself, and we'll be back on Saturday to talk about them obviously after their quarterfinal one as well. The only other game I wanted to cover, and then we'll talk about quarterfinals because we kind of incorporate like France. I can see a lot of comments, but we kind of incorporate France and the Netherlands a bit more when we talk about the quarterfinals. The only other one I wanted to mention, obviously, Colombia, Jamaica was obviously the other one, two nations that I think have surpassed people's expectations a little bit. Certainly Jamaica, obviously from that side. But Alina, did you see the game? What did you make of that one? And also just Colombia and obviously in this tournament because they've been kind of the standout. I guess if you're looking for a team that's maybe surpassed what I guess most people expected, they're the team that people are looking at.
Yeah, I mean, that group they made it out of, that might have been like the easiest group. As many people said, a lot of people would have obviously expected Germany to make it out of that group as the first to qualify, but it didn't happen. And I think it's great to see that they both did so well. With Colombia like writing history and coming so far, and Linda Caicedo really shining on the big stage. That's great to see, and I think there will be also a tough opponent for England. But as you said, Connor, you'll talk about that on another opportunity. I think it's just a shame that like about Colombia and Jamaica, there wasn't a lot of media coverage before the tournament, and you really would underestimate these teams, and you wouldn't know about the quality they have within the team. Because for Jamaica, it's remarkable, I think, what a little amount of goals they conceded, that they were so tight in defense, and it was really hard to like tell how they would play, what they would bring to the tournament, and to see it now on the television actually, and to see them play, that's incredible. And I wish there would have been more media coverage, and I hope that these teams get more attention and just increase coverage because they deserve it.
I was kind of amazed by the fact that so many people were sleeping on Colombia because I didn't see a whole lot of them over the last sort of Copa America cycle, the last Olympic cycle of that, but I still knew that they were runners up in the Copa America last year, so this is not, they're not blow-ins. They lost to Brazil in the final, if I remember rightly, so they do have a tradition. I think this is, the Philippines, Haiti, Vietnam, Ireland, they were all playing their first World Cup. Colombia have been there. Is this their third time at the World Cup? So they do have a bit of a tradition. Now, they've never done much before now, but we tend to forget, right, that in the beginning of this tournament, 4 or 5 days, the Monday before the tournament opened on the Thursday, Ireland played Colombia in a behind closed doors friendly that was abandoned after 20 or 25 minutes, right, because of the overly physical play of the Colombians, is what the Football Association of Ireland said. Now, for the Irish team to say, we're not playing against them, they're too rough, you kind of have to think, Jesus, what class of a war was going on behind closed doors for Vera Pauw to take the Irish cast? Do you think Katie McCabe walking away from that? I mean, they must have had weapons on the field, So I think that was the first indication that when the Colombian team were coming here, they weren't coming here to mess around. And Caicedo, we've seen the tug of war over Caicedo. She's wound up at Real Madrid now, I think, like an incredibly talented player. The goal that she scored against Germany was just absolutely world class. That's the kind of thing. And again, I hate drawing parallels to the men's game, but when Pele did that kind of thing at this World Cup in Sweden in 1958, the whole world just went, hang on a second, right? And she's still capable of that. And like they're playing obviously England now in the last 8. And I'm kind of thinking, we've seen a little bit on Twitter and on social media today where people are going, yes, well, so who are England meeting in the semi-finals, old boy? You go, hang on a second there, chaps. Pull on the handbrake there just a little bit. It's not going to be that easy. And if Colombia, which they're likely to do, if they bring the same physicality to the game against England as they did in the first 25 minutes before the abandonment against Ireland, I think England are really going to struggle to deal with these girls.
Yeah, I mean, there is a collective kind of within the English media. Obviously, we'll talk about this on Saturday properly. But obviously, Lauren James today obviously got announced that it's only a 2-game ban, and everyone's going, "Oh, well, when England gets to the final, that means James is back." And it's like that assumption that England have got an easier route. But as I've kept saying on this channel, these teams didn't just buy their way into the next round. They've got there because they are better than the teams they've knocked out at the time. So it's not there's no easier game just because England are. Just because they've knocked out, more established nations, if you want to call them that. It's certainly not an easier route. I'll do this in kind of reverse order then, because I want to look at the quarterfinals. Obviously, while we're on the topic of Colombia, you both mentioned the England's tie. Just ask you for kind of your score prediction in it, and then we'll go to the other 3 quarterfinals there. So, Phil, what do you reckon?
I am going to say that Caicedo scores 1-0 to Colombia, and it's the biggest bidding war in soccer history because people don't know that she only recently signed with Real Madrid.
That's fair enough. Alina, what are you going for in this one?
Oh, difficult to say. I'm so bad with predicting.
You've got to try and predict Sweden, Japan, yeah.
No, I'm not predicting that one because otherwise I'll just jinx it. That one I won't predict. But and then Colombia 2-1, I'd say.
That's fair enough. I think there's already a shout for 1-0 England in the chat. I honestly don't know. I can see it going either way. I can see England absolutely, battering and winning 3-4-0. I can see Colombia nicking this 2-3. I don't. It really depends which team, as you both kind of said, which team shows up. And I don't think many England fans would be able to take that, to be honest. Another one of those. Extra time winner for Colombia. I mean, to be fair, as getting the United goals back early, not against it. So we'll see.
United lads has always come out on this show. It's like, yeah, well, if they lose, it'll be fine.
Of course, got to look after our own. But yeah, we'll see how that one goes. But obviously, on that, we'll be back on Saturday to talk more about England and that game as well. We'll go to, like I said, we'll go in reverse order of kind of how we did it. So Australia, France, then. So Alina, I'll come back to yourself. And so how can you see this one go? We spoke a little bit about Australia, but what have you made of France as well and their kind of chances? Obviously, they're going to be playing, as we all know, obviously the hosts, Australia, tough opponent there. How can you see that one potentially going?
Yeah, I think with France, it's interesting to see. I feel like feels a bit like of their big comeback because obviously with a new head coach, I feel like that's been obviously no discussion about it. That's been the right thing, the right step for them, and you can see how it was for them to have a change of head coach, and that it got like key players back and back thriving. And I think France looked quite strong, obviously beating Australia before the tournament kicked off. I think they can do it again, but I think also like that Australia has a chance to win that game, and I think that's one of the games that might go to extra time. Don't see a clear winner here. Could really be France or Australia, but I think 1-1 after the 90 minutes, and then we go to extra time, and then we have a late minute goal.
The excitement already, my heart is just beating away in my chest here. I think Alina's right. I think that at this stage, I've been doing a few Twitter spaces in Swedish with our good friend Mia Eriksson, who's been on this channel a lot, and Hedvig Lindahl, who was Sweden's goalkeeper for the first 200 years of soccer's existence. And she talks about having a bucket of energy when you start these tournaments, and the bucket can leak, right? So if you've had a bad atmosphere in the camp, or if you get a lot of criticism, if there's people fighting internally, and the energy starts to run out, right? But that's the opposite of that is happening to Australia at the moment. They're the ones whose energy is getting filled all the time by the victories, by the return of Sam Kerr, by Mary's performances, by Hayley Raso, by all these players who are coming in and really doing their thing. And then let's not underestimate the home advantage that they have here. France in 2019 were an absolute basket case, right? Because they were the host nation and they put so much pressure on themselves. I was in their team hotel 1 or 2 days during that, and I've never seen, they looked like dead women walking. Like they literally looked like they were headed for the gallows. And I felt sorry for them because this is sport. This is what adults do when they play. You should enjoy it. This should be the greatest experience of your life. And as a coach and as a leadership team around them, to not have those girls feeling that way was appalling, and to not take that pressure off them. But I think that Hervé Renard has really succeeded in terms of doing that now. And he has given them the opportunity to be able to be their best selves down there. When you think of the players that they're missing, though, you really think, can they do it? Can they really dig deeper? Can their skill and technique and their experience, can that match the 50, 60, 70, 80,000 people roaring Australia and Sam Kerr on to victory? Personally, I think they're going to come up just short of that, solely because I want that sort of fairy tale Cinderella thing for Australia to go through and keep this tournament alive a little bit longer for them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they've got a good coach as well, France. Obviously, he did a very good job, obviously, with Saudi Arabia men's side that we've seen previously as well. So, yeah, I can't call that one. France have looked good in stages, but as you said, I don't think they've been as convincing, I think, as people think. And I think that home crowd, we saw it with England in the Euros last summer. That game against Spain for England, the crowd kind of carried England through. I think Australia are going to get that, certainly if they keep going deeper into the tournament. So I would probably put Australia ahead in that one. Maybe a nice 2-1 or a 2-0 or something like that. But the way Diane's playing, maybe. I don't know. But I can see Australia scraping through on that one. They haven't got Sam Kerr, have they? So I'll stop gassing up Chelsea players now because Don't want to be doing that too much on here. Spain, Netherlands, and obviously is the other one. That's in a few hours, actually. Not that long away, because that's obviously for those of us
We're
in
lining up in
Europe.
the tunnel as we speak.
I was going to say, for those of us in Europe, that's on at the early hours of the morning. What's going on here? That going from two was still a foul. Which one are we on about? Are we on about the one against Spain or the one in the final?
I think it's probably the one against Spain if that's Anton, yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, yeah, I'm happy Toon scored, to be honest. So we're all with that. But yeah, Alina, for yourself, Spain, Netherlands, how can you see this one going? And obviously, we spoke a bit about Spain, obviously against Japan in that game. Netherlands themselves haven't looked massively convincing. We spoke on the show last week that they probably would have been a little bit disappointed not to beat the US, obviously, in their group. Against Portugal, they weren't massively convincing, I guess, in that one as well. So what have you made of the Dutch in this tournament and their kind of chances in this game?
Yeah, I think they're also been in a bit of a transitional period with the new head coach, Andres Jonker. But I think they look quite well over large stages of the game. They have a lot of exciting youngsters in the team, Esme Bruchts, for example, who will be a massive star within the next years, and she scored some really nice goals. And but I think Netherlands always bring some sort of don't know the right word, if that's the right word, but stability with them to the tournament because they have well-established players. They're really calm, I think, and players that bring a lot of calmness and experience to the team. And I think that's something that they profit of massively. And players who have played so many tournaments, just look at Danielle van der Donk or Lieke Martens, obviously, Shaki Groenen, you name them, and they have played so many important tournaments. They know how it works, and then that's something that all the youngsters will definitely benefit of. So I would never write the Netherlands off. Spain, obviously a tough opponent. Can see that game definitely being played out in midfield. I think that will be a crucial part of the game. Obviously, both teams have world-class midfielders, world-class players. It's so difficult to predict that one, but I don't think that Netherlands have been that much underperforming. I think it's just they're in a bit of a difficult stage of their development, but they'll learn from it, they'll profit from it. So let's see how that one goes.
I think the Dutch have been sort of sneaky. They've just been sort of, we talk a lot in football now about peaking at the right times, and you need to peak just before Christmas and just before the season ends and that. And in tournaments, it's different. And I think the Netherlands have really got it right in terms of they haven't blown anybody out of the water in the group stage. They just did what they had to do and they got through. And when you have so many new young players in the team, that's actually vital because every minute or every half of football that you get to play in a big international tournament is worth 10 friendlies in the Algarve Cup for me. This is really, really pressurized football. And if you get in there and you can take your touches and you go, okay, I'm not going to drown here. I'm not getting people running around me. I'm not making mistakes everywhere I go, So I think that that's going to be really beneficial to them. And we've already spoken about the problems that Spain have had in the camp, and we've had the list from Anton of how many players are missing. I don't know. I still rate Spitzer, Anton. I still think she's a very good player, but I still think that, there's a thing with the Dutch, right? I just feel that they are more capable of adapting to the game than what Spain are, right? Because Spain went out there against Japan and they did the definition of lunacy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, which is what Spain did. And by God, did they get a different result when Japan beat the lights out of them. And I think that if Spain were to sort of, to hit the wall in the first 10 or 15 minutes, if they can't break the Netherlands down and they can't adapt to how the Netherlands are playing, then I think that they're going to get frustrated and they're going to get caught out because they continue to do the same things. They don't have, I feel anyway, the flexibility that the Dutch have showed. So my dark horses really at this stage are probably the Netherlands. I think that they can go a long way solely because they really don't have that, there's no drama about them. It's no soap opera this time around. And they still have the experience of being European champions and of playing in big clubs and going to big tournaments. I think it's all coming. The timing is just right for them, I feel, when they meet Spain.
Yeah, again, as I said at the start of the show, you don't need to listen to me because my two flops of the tournament were Netherlands and Sweden. So that's going well, isn't it? So, I probably shouldn't have admitted that with Alina right next to me.
Why would you bring that up, Sakana? Just let it go.
I shouldn't have said that. She never would have known. Yeah,
everybody shoots it off now going, yeah, man, that's a clue.
Yeah, that's going to be clipped up and it's sent around when one of them wins it.
Netherlands against Sweden in the final. And Connor sitting there going, there's no show this week. There's no show.
Imagine that happening.
Well, they actually can't meet in the final. They can meet in the semi-final because that would be the next. Because obviously they're on the same side of the bracket. But I don't know. I've not been that convinced by. I agree with you saying. I think the Dutch have done what they needed to do. So I think this will be the big one for them. We'll see how they do in this round of knockouts and against a good Spain side. Because it's tough for me to talk about Spain, as we've said, but obviously the issues they've got. Because I really want to praise them, but at the same time, I don't want them to go on and win it for obvious reasons. I mean, yeah, in looking back now, at the time, that they weren't my at the start, obviously, of this one. But I agree with that. I think this is probably, out of all of the quarterfinals that we've got, this is probably, I think, likely going to be the most high scoring, if we're looking at it from that point of view, potentially.
I'm setting my alarm clock now because you've sold that one to be there, Connor. Goals, I'm definitely getting up for goals, definitely.
Don't do that. It'll be a 0-0 now. No chance.
Yeah, I see you there.
I'm going to call you as it kicks off as well. Go, Connor, you said you get up for it. Come on, mate.
Just messages pinging off all over the place. Move on to the final quarterfinal then. Alina, I'm not going to ask you for a score prediction because you said that you wouldn't, and I knew that you wouldn't. But what do you think, obviously, looking at this game, obviously from a fan and from an outsider, which way can you see this game kind of going? But also, what do you think Sweden, I guess, need to improve on? Because obviously, we've all kind of said it. They rode their luck a little bit, obviously with some great saves as well, but rode their luck a little bit against the US. What do you think they need to change, if anything, going into this one against Japan? Because the one thing we know about Japan in this tournament, they're bloody clinical. Like, if they get a chance, they're likely going to score, 1 out of 2 of them for most of the time. So how can you see this one going? And also, what do you think Sweden need to change a little bit on that one?
Yeah, as I said, like at the beginning when we were speaking about the game against USA, I felt like Sweden's offensive play hasn't been that convincing. I mean, in that game they registered their first shot on goal in the 85th minute. That's a bit too late. Obviously, when you come up against a Japan side, which is so clinical and so ruthless, actually, and I feel like, and I spoke to like Mia Eriksson about it, and it was also on media, but I feel like the big question mark hanging above the Swedish team right now is like how to utilize Fridolina Rolfö for the best way possible, because I feel like they try to use her in a way that she's being used at Barcelona, obviously, but there Sweden at left back have Jonna Andersson, who is really, really good there and who's so clinical for Sweden, like, and so vital actually for Sweden with her crosses and with her set pieces. So obviously you have to play Fridolina Rolfö in a bit of a different role, and she's struggling a bit with that one at the moment. So it's difficult to find the perfect position for her when that one's been occupied by a different player, because you want to have both of these players on the pitch, obviously, because they are great. But other than that, I just feel like Sweden really need to be clinical, take their chances. I think defense has done their job. They have been so solid. Zecira Musovic has done a great job in goal so far. But I feel like it's really what they need to like improve is what they do in the final third of the opponent, and that will be very crucial against Japan, because Japan also very well structured, very, very solid, and you won't get a lot of chances against such a well structured side. So you need to take every chance they get, basically.
Phil, on this one, is this the one I mentioned earlier about obviously the last game having high score? Is this the one tie that potentially could have that worry of being almost a nil-nil? Because it's two sides that, again, we know Japan are clinical. They've scored a lot of goals, but again, a team that likes to counter attack. They do sit back against a little bit more than other sides that we've seen in the tournament. Sweden, obviously, in the last game, we saw that more than any game that we've seen all tournament. Is there a little bit of a worry that this is going to be two teams? It's going to maybe not going to be a great watch on the eye, but from a tactical point of view, that's what's going to win the game, rather than, I guess, brilliant attacking flair and things like that.
I think we're doing Japan a grave disservice by saying they're a team that wants to play on the counter-attack, right? Because of what they did against Spain. Japan, and this is why for me they're the best team in the tournament, is Japan, they give the game what it asks of them, right? If Japan need to play in the counter-attack, they play in the counter-attack. Japan are more than capable of possessing the ball and passing an opponent to death as well, right? They're more than capable. I have to disagree with Anton, because Anton was saying there in one of the comments a little bit earlier on there that, Japan want to, they'll find it hard to break down a low block. I don't think so, right? I think what they're going to do is, I think they're going to target Jonna Andersson, who's Sweden's left back, right? I think that's where they're going to start. And they're going to try to force players out of the middle. middle, probably Magdalena Eriksson, to come out in the middle and try to open up some sort of space or half space there that's going to force somebody to do something that Sweden do not want them to do, right? So keep an eye out for that. That's, if I was approaching this game, that's how I do it. And Japan, what has struck me most about Japan, is, yes, they're not the tallest team in the tournament, as Anton correctly points out. I think Amanda Illestedt could be back on track for the Golden Boot if Sweden get enough set pieces in this game. But what sticks out for me about Japan is not their technical ability or their tactical ability, it's their intelligence, right? When you see them get on the ball, they make the right decision every single time. Do they do the correct technique? Does the ball always get there? Not necessarily, but they do the clever thing, right? And that was how they were able to beat Spain to death at Spain's own game. This is how Spain play football. This is, they made this their whole sort of national trademark kind of thing. And for Japan to go out and do that, and then if you look at the other games that they played, Japan was able to mix it up just a little bit. And then with Kumagai at the back still, I don't know, there's just something, the last samurai standing there at the back that, I just think there's something almost fairy tale like about that tale. You have so many brilliant players, small, technical, brilliant players in there. And I do think that this idea of taking, what the game gives you, I think it's so clever to do that. And again, as Luke was making the point there, their movement off the ball is terrific. That's intelligence, Luke. That's seeing what the game is asking from you and giving it back. And so many teams have annoyed me so much by seeing, when you're playing football, right, you're at your most dangerous just after you pass the ball because nobody is looking at what you're doing, right? So you have to occupy new space, and you can change the shape of how the other team is operating just by moving 2, 3, 4 meters, right? And so many players are so lazy that they forget that in the course of a game, and they might do it for 5 minutes. The Japanese players do this for 90 minutes. They are forever moving in relation to one another, right? What does she need? Where does she need me to be? Does she need me to pull a player out? Does she need me to create another angle? This kind of thing. And it's absolutely brilliant to watch because for me, they're by far the most advanced team tactically and in terms of intelligence. And that's why I think that if they can keep that intelligence up, not give free kicks away inside their own half, not give away throw-ins by all means. Don't give away corner kicks because Jon Anderson is just going to stick them in under the crossbar. But if they can avoid doing those things, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy for them to beat Sweden, but I do think they have everything it takes to be able to do that.
I don't know which way I'm folded on this one. To be fair, it's two teams that I really like as well because I think, but either side, from that side of the draw, I'm looking at going, I don't mind any of those, Spain aside, the Dutch, Japan, or Sweden. I'm happy at any of those winning it and going far in the tournament or winning it because nothing against those nations. I don't have any reps there yet, but we potentially one day. So yeah, I'm not really too on this one. Japan, as you said, there's a lot of kind of stories about them. Would be nice to see Sweden go far again. I don't know. I really can't call this one.
But I think the one thing after talking up Japan so much, I think there's one thing that the whole football world would love to see. And that's Caroline Seger winning this tournament, right? There's nobody in my mind who deserves it more than Caroline Seger. I mean, her name is the Swedish word for victory, right? Seger means victory in Swedish. But to see the struggle that she's gone through just to get to this World Cup, to go to play, for the injury to flare up again, she's desperately trying to rehab herself, to get in there. And like somebody like that, Hedvig Lindahl is now sitting at home. You have Magdalena Eriksson there as well. You have so many players who have given...
Asllani, for example, as well. Just looked it up yesterday. She has over 170 caps for Sweden. It's insane.
It's incredible. And then Sophia Jakobsson, there's so many brilliant players there who really deserve something. I mean, I think Sweden won the Euros in 1984 when it was barely even an official tournament. I'm not even sure it was an official UEFA tournament back then. And for them to be the bridesmaids so often in terms of 2 Olympic silver medals, I think they came second in 2003, this kind of thing. There's so much there that, from that point of view, I'd love to see them dig it out. Peter Gerhardsson said an interesting thing to me. He says this a lot. I met him in May and we sat down, we talked about the tactics thing again. And he was talking about how always change a winning team. Like this thing of never change a winning team, that's bullshit, right? And now he's going to start the same team for the 4th or 5th time in this tournament, right? That tells me that, okay, now he's settled on a team, but I think that might make it very easy for Japan to analyze, so I would actually don't ask me which player he should take out, right? But I would like to see him come with a joker tomorrow, play Rebecca Blomqvist up front for the first half an hour and then take her off and put Blackstenius. Just do something different to confuse the Japanese, because if he comes out with the team that the Japanese are expecting, I expect them to have a really, really solid game plan to go at them, But nothing will give me greater pleasure than to see Sweden win tomorrow morning and then, to win a semi-final and for Seger to finally get that gold medal that she so richly deserves.
We manifest. That would be amazing.
Yeah, no, agree. And especially what you've both mentioned it throughout the show, Mia Eriksson is back on Monday, so that would be perfect if Sweden could progress, because that would make the show a lot easier.
I'll make a few calls and make sure that happens for you.
So that would be not. But yeah, I can see it going either way. I'm not going to put a score prediction on this one because I can really see that one going either way. Right, a kind of quick fire one to round off, and then we'll look to wrap this one up then. I think I asked this to the guys last week. Have your tournament predictions changed since, from what you said, I don't know what you predicted at the start of the tournament, but for the Golden Boot and for winner, have your predictions changed since then? I'll let either of you go first if you want to out yourself to what you said pre-tournament.
Can't remember making any predictions. Think that one of my top 3 nations to win the tournament were Germany, Brazil, USA, and I think nothing to add to that. We know how it went for all of them. I don't know if it would have been possible, but a Germany-Brazil final was predicted by a lot of people, and obviously wouldn't have thought that Amanda Ilestedt would be in the race for the Golden Boot, but here we go. Expect the unexpected. It's great to see you, obviously, because I feel like also that defenders, goalkeepers, they deserve much more credit for what they get. But since I didn't really make any predictions, nothing changed a lot. It's been really surprising in some aspects, but really nice to see, actually. So over to you, Phil.
I think virtually everybody's predictions, I mean, it's not just the Conor Roberts trophy that everybody's competing for here. I think everybody's predictions went in the bin after the group stage, when Brazil went out, and then when the USA went out, and when Germany went out, and all these, like Norway went out. There's only ever been 4 winners of this tournament, and 3 of them are already gone. The only remaining winners are 2011 Japan. So I think everybody's predictions went wide of the mark there. I mean, I think we would have had Alexandra Popp would have been up there as in terms of the Golden Boot. She's not going to win that now. Nobody would have thought that Amanda Ilestedt is going to be in there with a good shout for it, you know. So I think everything has definitely changed, but I think there's one prediction that I'm really happy I was wrong about, because I've thought for a long time that a 32 country World Cup was going to be difficult. I thought that we're going to have more Thailand 13-0. Good man, Luke. I hope you got a couple of quid on that. Not that I would ever recommend gambling, but you probably would have got good odds on that. Good odds on Japan winning there. But I am delighted at the fact that this has been a World Cup where there's been very few humiliations for the smaller teams. I know Morocco got a bit of a hiding, but then they made it out of their group and they sort of saved face by doing that. So there's been so many good news stories for women's football out of this. And you know what? Change is not bad. Germany not making it out of the group, that's not bad. Megan Rapinoe, for all, she's fine. She's going to do absolutely okay with all her medals and all her fame and all her lovely blue hair, you know. Aitana MVP of the tournament if she reaches the final. That's a big if right there, Anton, because I think this is the other thing now, that when you get down to the win or go home part of it, this is where people like Zeciro Musovic stands up and goes, you know, nobody may have known who she was. I mean, I don't think Emma Hayes even knew who she was before this tournament. And now all of a sudden the whole world is talking about her. So these are the players now that are coming out and that are making an impression. And for me, this is the biggest victory of the whole lot, is people in Australia are talking about this. People in England and in Sweden. Like, I'm in WhatsApp groups now with fellas who wouldn't cross the road to watch women's football even last summer when England were winning the Euros, right? And now everybody's talking about it. And that for me is the best thing about it. And I still think that the best of the drama is yet to come, with the teams that are left in this, with Australia left, with Sweden left, with England left, with these ties that we have that are coming up now. How could the best of the drama not be left? Because no matter what happens from here on in, I think we're all just going to be on the edge of our seats, starting at 3 o'clock Central European time, 2 o'clock in the UK tomorrow morning.
Phil, it's such a pleasure to listen to you, honestly. I also would like to take this opportunity and say we knew Zeciro Musovic before, and we knew how good she was, actually.
We were like John the Baptist screaming our truth in the desert there, Alina.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, when you're looking at the games that are remaining, the teams that are in it, there's certainly some drama still to be had. I'm just glad, to be fair as well, that the games after the Spain-Dutch one is actually on a more reasonable times for us Europeans moving forward after this one, because I'm pretty sure they're all like kind of 9, 10, 11 o'clock times. So we move on that one. Right, we'll wrap it up there then, mainly because we've done a lot of long shows recently, and we're back again on Saturday and again next Monday. So I'll come to that in a second. Before I do, obviously, Phil, you mentioned it earlier, you do a few spaces and things like that. You've done it throughout the tournament. Where can people follow you, find all of that work, and And if people want to join and listen to those, where can people do that?
Yeah, the best way is to go to Twitter/X. If you follow me there at Philip O'Connor, usually the spaces are every 3 days, and they're at 9 o'clock Central European time, which is 8 o'clock in the UK, but they're in the Swedish language. So I'm going to be doing those with Hedvig Lindahl, the former Sweden goalkeeper, and with Mia Eriksson. Mia, people have seen her on this show before, but she's so good at the data analysis side of things, you know. So I have the overview that I have, and then we have Hedvig, who has played a million times for Sweden and has won 2 Olympic silver medals and all sorts of stuff there. And we get some really great insight for her for everything from penalty shootouts and that kind of thing. So I think Erling might be, that's a Norwegian name, so I think Erling might understand the Scandinavian languages if you know anybody who's into that kind of thing. And I will be writing a little bit more now, hopefully. I've been sort of helping out on this, the general news reporting for the Scandinavian teams, but I'm hoping to be able to write a little bit more about the other teams I don't normally write about, such as England, for the Reuters news agency, and hopefully do a little bit more analysis around the games as well, because there's been brilliant coverage of what's happening in this World Cup by many of the major media outlets, but not necessarily why. And that's what I want to get into now, is explaining to people to the extent that I can why teams are winning and losing, and why Zecira Musovic is able to have such a huge influence in the Swedish team, why Sam Kerr, you know, why the Cathy Freeman comparison, all these things. So looking forward to a couple of weeks of that before this is done and dusted and we get back to the WSL.
No, for sure. Make sure you go and do that. I'm surprised if people aren't following you. I'll be amazed because you've got that many times.
Mad if they're not doing it by now.
I know. I'll be very surprised. But Alina, for yourself, obviously, not been. I was looking earlier when I sent you the link to this. It's last October you came on. It's when United played Chelsea. LSV.
Who produces this show? That's a disgrace.
It's just busy now. Alina's going up and
busy. I was really busy.
The contract demands on Alina now. It's unbelievable. It's so hard now.
Unbelievable.
But
trucks of cash being delivered to Munich. Unbelievable.
Yeah, but I haven't really followed the WSL since October, so there wasn't a lot of input from my side to bring on here. But yeah, right now I'm like mostly covering German women's football. If anyone's interested in that one, Frauen Bundesliga, obviously, and you can find me on Twitter at Alina_RXP.
Definitely go and make sure you check out these two. It's been a fantastic show, as I thought it would be. Appreciate all of your comments. Obviously, Jennifer, as always, you're always in the chat, so that's great to see.
Hang on a second. Before y'all leave, if people are watching the show, you haven't subscribed and clicked on, where is the bell up there? Go do that now, right? Because Connor does these shows several times a week, and he does it brilliantly, and he puts his heart and soul into it. So tune in, and he's always there for your comments, and he's always there for a bit of banter, and the odd transfer rumor, and that kind of thing on Twitter as well. So don't forget to follow him as well, and to subscribe to the channel.
What Phil said, there's nothing more to add.
We love Connor. We really love Connor. You'd be surprised how much we love Connor. It's like,
oh, don't you? You're making me go red in a minute. But no, I appreciate it. I knew this would be a good tip, as people have known, obviously, with the... And also, as I said earlier, go and subscribe to Miriam's channel, because it's fantastic, by the way. Always happy to. She'll be back on again soon as well, so keep an eye on that one. But no, I appreciate it both, and it would be a good one. Two of the best people I have met during these times doing these shows, that's for sure. As I said before, multiple ending shows. The Emma Watson show will be released when it's announced. As I said earlier, United are teasing it. Well, not even teasing it. They're accidentally leaking that she's in training. She's been training all week. Why United haven't announced it officially, don't know. We're expecting another sign in the next kind of few weeks as well, so keep an eye on that one. I think we're going to get some movement now. There might be an announcement tomorrow, looking at pre-season and things like that. If there is, we might be going live, I don't know. Regardless, back on Saturday, Lioness's show, obviously talking about that, and then back next Monday, as we've said earlier, Mia Eriksson on that one to talk about the kind of quarterfinal games, and we look to do another World Cup wrap. So make sure you're doing all that, following these guys, liking the video, subscribing, all of that jazz, and we shall see you guys in the next one.